Alright, so when we start looking into rendering softwares, there are two major aspects we look at to rate these rendering softwares. Number one is the photorealism of the images the render software can produce, and number two is the speed of the interface, or the speed at which it can produce those photorealistic images. So what if I told you that D5 Render maxes out in these two aspects? Okay, hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Henry and I'm going to be guiding you through D5 Render. So if you don't know what D5 Render is, D5 Render is a recently produced real-time rendering software. So I'm going to be guiding you through D5 Render. I've done many videos on D5 Render exploring the free version, but in today's video I'm going to be exploring the pro version. So in this pro version we are going to explore the full potential of D5 Render in rendering an exterior scene. D5 Render is basically free, but you can get the pro version at a very subsidized rate. I think it's about $360 yearly to get the pro version, but I'm going to offer you a bonus. If you follow my affiliate link, you are going to get a 5% discount as well as an extension on your free trial. So make sure you check that out. It will be in the description below. So without any further ado, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, also hit the notification bell to get notified, because we are going to be doing more videos like this. So I'm going to go further into the next phase of this video, explaining some more things about D5 Render, including the whole jargons of system requirements, the price in details and all those stuff. So the first thing to do is to open the D5 Render software. So you can get the D5 Render software from d5render.com. If you just click on the website, you are going to see option to just download it for free. So once you have opened the D5 Render software, you have installed it, downloaded the additional file, and you have opened it, you are just going to see this kind of miniature interface. So it's nothing too complex, it's just simple and straightforward. So the first thing you should do is to log in. So you can log in by clicking on this icon. As you can see, I've already logged in. So if you haven't logged in, you are going to see something, it will just appear more black and it's going to give you the option to sign up or log in. So if you sign up, they are going to basically ask for your email and you are going to create a password custom for you. Okay, so once you have logged in, let's talk about the pricing of D5 Render. And for this, I'm going to need to go back to their website. So you can go to their website, it's just d5render.com. Very nice website where you can access all their features and get all the information you want. So firstly, as I showed you, most aspects of D5 Render are totally free, so you don't need any money involved to get D5 Render. Okay, but you can upgrade to the pro version. The pro version gives you a lot of advantage, especially on limited AI rendering and more library components. So you can get the full version of D5 once you get the pro version, and it's not too expensive. So as you can see, you have the individual subscription and you have the team subscription. Under this individual and team, you can now subscribe yearly or you can choose to subscribe monthly. So for the monthly subscription, if you're an individual, you are going to be paying $38, while in the yearly subscription you are going to be paying $360 a year, which if you divide it by 12 is going to be resulting in $30 a month. If you go to the team version, for the monthly subscription you'll be paying $75 as a team. Team is 2 people and above, and you are going to be paying $708 yearly, so you are saving 21%, which is so nice and good. But you can also use my own affiliate link. It will be in the description below. What this affiliate link is going to do for you is going to extend your free trial in D5 Render, as well as give you a 5% discount. So yes, 5% may not sound as too much, but you can just save that little change you want to use for another thing. So that out of the way, let's now talk about system requirements of D5 Render. So for this, according to D5 Render website, what the minimum requirement is GTX 1060 or the equivalent on the AMD series of GPUs. But honestly, from my experience using the software, what I'll personally recommend as minimum is RTX 2070. And it's not like I'll guarantee you that RTX 2070 will serve you as well as other series like 30 series and so, because D5 is a very GPU intensive software. But when I mean intense, I mean very intense, even compared to other rendering software. So you need to have a quite substantial budget if you want to look for a system to get D5 Render. So now we are going to go to Revit, where I did the modeling. The modeling software we're going to be using for this project is Revit. As I told you, I'm a Revit user, and if you are curious to see how I was able to model this using Revit, you can check out my full course, Revit full course. I covered every step I took in modeling this duplex, so you can just check that out if you are interested in Revit and you want to become a pro user of Revit. So the first thing we're we're going to be doing is we're going to be exporting this file to D5, so it will be compatible with D5. So as you can see, if you look at my interface, you're going to see a D5 icon. D5 icons doesn't come automatically when you get Revit software, but you need to download the D5 Revit plugin. So to do this, we're going to go back to the D5 software, so D5 website. So you can see under this workflow here, you're going to see options. So these options give you the opportunity to download the plugins for these various softwares, including SketchUp, 3ds Max, Revit, Rhino, ArchiCAD, Blender, and Cinema 4D. So you can get their live sync. Once you get it and you run it as administrator, you are just going to see the icon on your software for you to export to D5. Okay, so we are going to start exporting from Revit to D5 render. Let me save this. So there are basically two ways to export Revit to D5 render, from Revit to D5 render. You can use the start D5 render icon, or you can use the manual export. So honestly, I usually prefer this export method because I've had some PTSD using this start D5 method. Although D5 has made a lot of improvements since then, so I'm not telling you that it doesn't work well. It actually works well. I'm just used to exporting it manually. So what I'll do first, as you can see in this project, I have some fences. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to hide each of these fences and export them separately. Okay, so you can see that in these fences I group them together per each axis. So why I did this is that when I carry them to D5 render, I'll be able to hide the ones I want to hide and leave the ones I want to leave in each respective view. So it's just going to give me more versatility. So I'm just going to click on Control on my keyboard to select multiple of this fence, all this fence, and I'm just going to right click and hide in view by element. Okay, this is some Revit stuff, but I just have to do it because it's inevitable while doing this kind of tutorials. So now I'm going to export this building now. So there are some things I don't want to be in this building while exporting, like I don't want this chair that is on this balcony, so it's going to interfere with my exporting and it's going to just interfere with the rendering overall. So what I'm going to do now, and I've done this, I'm just going to make sure, click on this 3D icon. If you are using Revit, you'll be familiar with this. Click on this center point and drag this pivot point to the center. While I'm doing this is when I carry this to D5, the position of this pivot point is where I'm going to be able to move the object from. So that is why it's important I place it at the center. So once I click on close and I'm just going to rotate it back to this way, I'm now going to click on this export icon. So in this export icon, you're going to see some parameters, but basically I won't recommend for simple projects to check any of these. What I'm just going to do is I'm just going to increase this export smoothness a bit, so it's going to have some more definition and quality when it exports. So I'm just going to click on export and I'm going to save it where I want to save it in my file. So it's going to give you access to your file explorer, and I'm just going to create an export folder and save this project. So I'm just going to right click and I'm going to click on new to create a new folder for the export, and I'm just going to call this 01 exports. So once this is done, I'm just going to double click on it and I'm going to give this file a name, and I'm just going to call this minimalist duplex. Okay, then I'm going to click on save. So of course, depending on how heavy it is, the longer it takes. If it's heavier, it will take to export. So once I'm done exporting this, we're now going to start exporting each individual fence. Okay, so now this is done exporting. I'm just going to highlight this building and I'm just going to right click and hide in view by element. Then I'm just going to click on this reveal element icon and I'm going to start on hiding each of these fence individually. So I'm going to be exporting them one by one. So I'm going to click on this front fence. I'm going to hide in view by element. I'm going to uncheck this reveal elements toggle and I'm just going to click on this icon here. Click on this central point and drag it to this center point here. Then I'm just going to close this. Then I'm going to click on export and I'm going to export it as F1. Then I'm going to click on save. So I'm just going to repeat the same process for the remaining fences. So I'm just going to do the same thing. Alright, so now the exporting is done. We're now going to open D5 render proper. So I'm just going to click on it again and I'm just going to click on this icon, this new icon here, to open a new file. Then I'm just going to click on new. Then we are going to open a new D5 file. So this is basically the D5 interface. They are going to give you a beginning guide, so you can start the beginning guide. So I'm just going to click and close this and we are going to start working with D5 from the D5 software. So now you can see, you are going to see an array of icons here and an array of icons
icons here, and you also see one at this center here. And I promise you, as we explore D5 and we practically use it to render this project, you are going to see the uses of every of this icon in this D5 interface. So now what we are going to do first is we are going to click on this icon here. That is the import icon, and we're going to bring in those exports we did. We're going to be using these ones we just exported from our Revit folder. And I'm just going to click on export, so you're going to see all the files. So if you export from Revit to D5, it will always come as a .d5a file. So it's like a custom file for D5 render specifically. So I'm just going to click on this minimalist duplex, and I'm going to click on open. So now once I've done this, you're going to see it's going to appear in this imported icon, and beside this imported icon, you're going to see the object icon. So the object icon is currently empty because I've not placed anything I've imported in this project. So let's just click on the imported icon back, okay, and we're just going to import the remaining fences. So I'm going to click on import, and I could just hold Control and select all of them at once, F1, F2, F3, F4, and I'm just going to click on open, and it's going to import all of them simultaneously. So place them inside this D5 file. I'm just going to click on this, click on any of them I want to place, then it's going to load a bit depending on how heavy the project is. Then I'm just going to place this here. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the navigation interface in D5 Render, how to navigate around your project. So as you can see, I'm holding the scroll button on my keyboard currently to zoom in and zoom out. So you have two options of navigation, and to access those options, you are going to go over to this tab here. So this tab that looks like somebody moving with rotation around him, you are going to see whether you want to orbit. So what orbit basically means is that you are just going to zoom in and zoom out. Then once you right click, you are going to click on a pivot point, and it's going to serve as a pivot point to hover around the building. So I'm currently right clicking, and as you can see, is serving as a pivot point. So the most preferable movement option I like is the fly version. So in this fly movement option, you are going to be given the opportunity, if you right click, you can change your angle of view, and if you zoom in and zoom out, you can now zoom into the project and zoom out of the project. So it gives you freedom to move like a ghost. You can also click on it, and you can also increase the speed. So if you want it to be zooming in faster, you can see how fast it is while I'm zooming in. So this gives you option and versatility in your movements, and very easy to do. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to be bringing in these other fences. So we're going to start from F1, click on it, we're going to place it here, click on F2, we're going to place it here, click on F3, we're going to place it here, and click on F4, and we're going to place it here. Okay, so now we have placed the four of them. We are going to try and place them very well. As you can see, they are fences, and we need some level of accuracy while placing them. So this will be difficult while working in this 3D view. So the easiest thing to do is to hit T button on your keyboard. So this T button gives you access to an orthographic view in D5 Render, which is one advantage I love about D5. So it gives you opportunity to move in an orthographic level. So I'm just going to move this fence and try to visually maneuver it to hit the point where I want it to hit. So I'm going to do the same for this, and I'm now going to move the same for this. So now this is done. I'm going to click on P on my keyboard, and I'm going to access the 3D view again. So you can see we have brought in the components of our Revit model to D5 Render, and it's looking good. So the next thing we're going to be entering is the camera placement. So to get a good perspective view, you need to understand camera views very well. So in exterior views, you need to get the angle right, you need to get the focus, you need to understand the context, and you need to make the building the center of focus, because a lot of times people don't understand some of those basic principles. So I'm just going to be guiding you on how to pick a camera shot in my own opinion. So now the first thing to do is, before picking your camera shot, is to click on this orbit or this fly movement speed, and you're just going to reduce the speed. So once you've reduced the speed, it's going to give you the ability to move slowly, so you will not need to move so fast, so you can get the exact 3D point you want to get. So you also have these camera options here. If you click on these camera options, you're going to see an area of options. You can choose to set focus, to add depth of field, but for now we are not working with these because we don't need them for a basic 3D shot. So I'm just going to reduce this view angle to 75 degrees. So I think 75 degrees is, and once you reduce the view angle, this is going to change as well. So they work hand in hand. So now once I get 75 degrees, I'm going to try and get a more balanced perspective where the building can be the center of focus. So while working in 3D views, it's always good to try. You can click on this display and you are going to click on this grid icon. So what this grid icon does is that it helps you get the center of your frame. So as you can see, you have 6 boxes, or rather 9 boxes, and we have a center one. So if the subject you are rendering is not in this center box, you need to try and make it in the center box to get a good perspective view. So as you can see, we are just going to hit F8 to get a good perspective. Okay, or if the key isn't working, you can just simply go over here, go to this camera, and you are just going to click on this F8 to add 2-point perspective. So this automatically gives your view a 2-point perspective setting. So no matter how you move the camera up or you move the camera down, it's still going to maintain a 2-point perspective. So now we have this setting on. We are now going to try and adjust it to get a good camera angle. So we are going to pick about 2 views, and let me say something like this. Okay, I think this is balanced. Okay, so I think this is a balanced view, and I'm just going to click on add. Then I'm also going to go over to this side of the building. And now you can see this fence is obstructing us. If you click on this object tab here, you are now going to see, now we have placed this object, you are going to see all of them here. Okay, so if I just click on this fence here, I'm just going to see this eye icon in this object icon here. Now it's highlighted. Then I'm just going to click on hide. So now you can now see we have temporarily hidden this fence. So if I for example go to this shot now, let me click on E. So you can also use your keys to navigate. I'm using Q on my keyboard now to hit Q to go up. I'm using E to go down. So once you have gotten a good perspective, and let's say you get this one and you click on pick perspective view. So now if you click on this view again, you are going to see that this fence I hid before is going to unhide. Okay, so if I go back to this view now, you are now going to see it's going to hide again. So this is the versatility I was talking about while importing your components to D5 render. So we're going to unhide the fence and we're going to try and pick another shot. Like I said, we have already saved that scene, so it's not really a problem. So now we're now going to pick a shot from the approach. Let's bring our camera shot down. Okay, go up a bit. Then let's say try and centralize the view. Okay, so we are just going to use this our grid. So one thing about this grid also helping is it also helps to get the horizontal lines very well. So you can see this horizontal grid. I'm looking at this mullion here, so it's helping me serve as a guide for me to get that good perspective view I'm looking at. So let me just move it a bit and try and see if I can centralize the building. Okay, I just want to get some of the green area, so I think let me reduce the speed again, and I'm just going to snap it. Okay, so now this is done. I think we are done with the camera shot. I'm going to hit P, and then I can now increase the speed to navigate around the project very well. Okay, so now another thing to note is that you can also make some adjustment. For instance, if you have an issue in your Revit file and you want to update it on D5 render, you can easily do that. It's not hard. So let's say you go back to this our project, and I want to update it. If I go to this NGL, let me just go to architecture. Let me just draw a simple random wall here. Okay, so if I click on this 3D and I click on export again, let me just make sure I centralize this pivot point. Click on this pivot point again. Click on this icon here. Drag this center point here and just close it. Okay. So once I've done this, just to make sure I colorate with the one formal D5 export, I'm going to click on D5 render, click on export, and I'm just going to click on export, and I'm just going to override this D4 file. So once I've done this, I'm going to go back to D5 render and I'm just going to update it here. So to do that is very simple. I'm just going to click on this file here. Once I go back to Revit and I make sure that the thing has completely exported. Okay, now it has completely exported. Once I'm sure it has completely exported, I'm just going to click on this model here. Then I'm just going to go over around here and click on this reload and click on confirm. So it's just going to update it. So as you can see, this our fence has come out here. So let me just go back to Revit, delete this fence, repeat the same process, click on export again, and just do the same thing but replace this building. So we are going to rectify this self-imposed mistake we did. So as usual, we are going to wait a bit. Once we are sure it's done, let me open the Revit file. So once I'm sure the thing is done, I'm now going to update it again. So I'm going to go back to D5 render, click on this, then I'm just going to click on update to update the D5 file. Okay, so now we are done with this update. We are going to start working on the composition. Okay, so the next stage we are going to be going is the environmental lighting. So we're going to tweak the environmental lighting effect and see how it relates with the building before we start applying the materials that is going to be reflective based on the kind of lighting we do now. So to edit the lighting of this scene in D5 render, you are going to go to effect. And once you have gone to this effect, you are going to the first thing to do is to turn off this auto exposure. So this kind of leaves D5 is normal in control exposure, so it now gives you the option to control the exposure yourself. So what you are going to do is you are now going to go over to this tab here. You can reduce it or increase it. So you are just going to reduce it to it reaches a good spot, which I think this is okay for a starting point. Okay, so now the next thing we are going to do is we are going to reduce this bloom effect. That is why it's giving this kind of glowing like feel. So we are just going to reduce it. Next, we are going to go back to environment for now. Then we are going to go to this custom sum setting and we are going to check it on. So what this custom sum setting does is that it gives you more control over your sunlight. So you are going to get control of the intensity, which I'm going to reduce to about 0.5. The sun disk radius, I'm going to increase it to about 5 points, so it makes the shadows softer. I'm also going to increase the cloud amount because I want more clouds in this render scene, and I'm going to reduce this altitude. So I'm going to reduce it to about 16. Okay, then I'm now going to use this azimuth angle to change the angle of the sunlight. So I'm just going to adjust it to somewhere, let's say here. Let's use here. So as you can see, we haven't placed anything in the environment. That is why it's looking kind of pale and blank. So I'm going to go back to this effect. I'm going to just tweak the exposure a bit. I'm going to go over to this contrast. I'm going to kind of increase the contrast just a bit. I'm going to go to this white balance, reduce it to almost 6,000, increase this thing to about 0.06. Then go to this bloom. I don't think I just need a bit of the bloom. Then turn on this vignette small, and I'm just going to increase the saturation just a bit above 0 to about 0.03. So I think for now this is a good render setting to start up. Then I'm just going to go back to this environment again, and I'm just going to adjust this sunlight. Let me reduce this angle again, and I'm just going to see how I can tweak this sunlight here. Then I'm just going to click on this update icon here to update this our scene we are working with. Okay, so now I can see the scene. We have updated some things, but clearly this is looking pale. So now we are done with the environmental lighting. We're now going to go into material application. So I'm going to be applying materials on the major aspect of the building, and I'm also going to be applying it on the environmental aspect and the other side aspect. So I'm going to click on P on my keyboard to exit the 2-point perspective setting. So let's start from the site to the building. Okay, for the materials, you're just going to click on assets. Okay, so under this asset, you're going to see a D5 full library where you can access D5 components and D5 materials. So D5 has a large area of materials ranging from asphalt to outdoor materials. So let's start from this outdoor ground. So this outdoor ground, you can see a lot of outdoor tiles to use. So one of my personal favorites is this exterior paving. Okay, let me just wait for it to load, because D5 requires the internet, so you need to be connected to internet to access this component. Okay, so the one accessible now is the asphalt material. So I'm just going to click on this asphalt material, and I'm just going to apply it on this paved road. So now I'm going to click on I on my keyboard to edit this asphalt material because I think it's dark, too dark. So I'm going to click on it. So once you click on it, you click I, you are going to see this pen icon. You just click on the material. You are going to see an interface of options to edit your material. So you can see this base color and base color map. So we're going to start from this base color, which talks about how the color hue on the base color, the metallic, the reflectivity. So let's start from this base color, and we're going to make it lighter. So I don't want this to be too gray. I just want it to be light gray, so it will be somewhat good. So I think this is enough. I don't think I need to increase or reduce the specular nature. Then I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to click on this exterior paving, which I plan to use as the paved area for this building. So I'm just going to click and place it. So once I've done this, I'm going to click on I on my keyboard. I'm going to click on this paved area. Then I'm just going to edit this paved area. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to click on this round corner effect. So this round corner kind of bevels the edges. So if we go to this edge, for instance, you're going to see it's going to appear rather beveled. Let me just slow down the speed. So as you can see, it's appearing beveled. So now this material is looking too red. I don't want it to be too red like this. So I'm going to edit this material and make it lighter. Okay, so I'm going to click on it. We are still working in the interface. We're going to click on this color and make it lighter first. We're going to go to this base color map. So this base color map is literally the bitmap of this material. If you click on it, you are going to give option to change it to your own custom one, but that's not what we want to do. So I'm just going to click on this icon here. As you can see, this two-way icon I clicked on here. Then I'm going to reduce the saturation to a very low amount, and I'm just going to increase kind of like the exposure of the material. So you can see it has become a lighter version of that color. So I'm going to reduce this saturation to basically 0, increase this exposure to about 7. So I think I've gotten the kind of material I want. So I'm just going to click on it. So now you can copy materials from one part to the other. So by just clicking on this duplicate icon over this material interface, I'm just going to click on it and I'm going to paste it here. Then I'm going to click I on my keyboard, select this material. Then I'm just going to create kind of a nice aesthetical touch. I'm just going to click on this two-way icon and reduce the saturation. So it's going to appear reddish. Okay, so now we are going to apply some concrete material on these curbs. Just to okay, so to do that, we are just going to be hovering under concrete. So under this concrete, we are going to access our concrete library where we can download different kind of concrete. So one of the concrete I love working with is this rough concrete 09. So I'm just going to click on it and I'm going to paste it here. So now I can just zoom in and I can just see the texture. Click on I on my keyboard, click on it to access the material editor. Then click on this turn on triplanar, click on this round corner settings. Then I can now drag and increase or reduce the scale depending on how I want it to be. So now this is done. We are now going to just edit some of this material, like this parking lot. I want to make it white. So once I click on it, I'm just going to go to this base color. You can see the orange appearance is there and I'm going to change it to white. So even materials from Revit, you can always edit it in D5 render. So now we are going to apply some green areas. So usually green areas is one of the last materials I apply, but since this is a small scale green area, I'm not talking about this background green area, I'm talking about this one within the site. I can just do it. So the first thing I do to apply a realistic green area, there are basically two ways. One is easier and in my opinion is not as realistic as the second one I'm going to show. But the easy way out is to just click on it, click on this custom tab and change it to grass. So it's going to generate your 3D grass for you. No problem. So you can see the 3D grass is actually nice, but it's not really what I want. So I'm just going to click on this and change it back to custom. So you can see the material applied here is still there, but there's no, it didn't generate any 3D grass. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to this natural raw materials, natural ground raw materials, and we're going to be loading in a very nice realistic base for our grass. So now we have this dry deciduous woodland. So I'm just going to click on it and I'm going to place it here. So once I've placed it here, you can see this can serve. This is not yet a green area, but it's kind of like a base for the green area. So and I'm going to go to model. Under this model, you can see the group of models. You can see different kind of models: nature, characters, animal, vehicles, backbone. But we are going to go to nature because we want to load in some grass components. So I'm just going to go to ornamental grass. Under this ornamental grass, I'm now going to click on brush. So once I click on brush, I'm going to increase this radius so it's going to brush on this whole material. I'm now going to select a simple grass cluster. Then I'm going to increase the density to about 85%, reduce the size to about 10%, reduce this random size to about, or increase this random size to about 10% as well. Then I'm just going to, you are going to see something like a bucket of paint pouring. Then I'm going to place the green area. So you can see this is a more realistic grass because it's placed as components. Then I'm going to uncheck this and I'm just going to check this as well. Then I'm going to reduce the density of this, so it's not going to be as much, and place this as well. Then I'm going to uncheck this. I'm going to add one final greenery. That is this one. It's just like an extra touch just to highlight the imperfection of nature. Then I'm just going to reduce the density to the barest minimum. Then I'm going to place it so you can see the greenery here. So this is looking nice. So now we are done with the greenery. We're now going to be placing the materials on the building and some other parts. So you can see I've done something. So let's just place the outdoor, the background greenery. Let me just increase the speed of this, my camera movement, and I'm going to put a material on this background greenery. So I'm just going to go to assets. Under assets, I'm just going to go to materials. Under these materials, I'm now going to go to outdoor ground. So I'm just going to be looking for a nice background materials for this, my outdoor greenery. Okay. I'm going to go to natural raw ground, and I'm just going to load in a outdoor background material. So I'm going to be using this grass gravel. I usually like using it at large scales, so I'm just going to click and place it. So this is going to give the background of the building a desert-like appearance, which kind of helps in a way because it highlights the focus of the render, which is this building. So I'm going to click on I on my keyboard. I'm just going to click on this, and I'm just going to go over to this stretch here. Then I'm going to increase the stretch to be very big. Then once I do this, I'm going to go to this base color, click on this. Then I'm just going to change this hue and change the color towards greenish brown. Then I'm just going to drag it here and drag it down. So once I've done this, now I'm going to start applying materials on the building itself. So I'm going to apply some wall materials, and I'm also going to apply some roof glass, whatever you may name it as well. So let's start from the wall. So in walls, I'm just going to go to assets, and I'm going to go to wall paint. So you're going to see an option. Let me just start from wall paint. Depending on how fast your internet is, as you can see, some area of wall paints are loading. So I'm just going to select from the ones I have. We have not done something that is very, very important. We have not saved this file. So it's very important to save your file, especially when you are using sensitive hardware components like desktops that may turn off with surges if you are not using any good inverter or UPS. But it's always good regardless to save your project while working. So I'm just going to hit Ctrl S, and I'm just going to save this D5 file where I want to save it. So I'm just going to give it a name, D5 full course. So now this is done, I'm just going to click on save, and I'm going to save this project. We are going to continue on the material application, which as I remember, we are working on the walls. So I'm just going to select and try and select a good wall paint. Normally I like using this white wall paint because it doesn't really have any texture per se, but I just like it simple that way. So I'm just going to place it, and I'm going to edit the material a bit. So I'm going to click on I on my keyboard, and I'm going to select this wall material. Firstly, I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go over to this round corner settings and turn on the round corner on to bevel the edges a bit. Then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to just change the hue. I'm going to kind of make the color beige, just off-white a bit. Let me just leave it at this. So I'm just controlling the color here. So once I've done that, I'm now going to apply some other material. So I'm going to be going, since this is a simple and minimalist building, I'm now going to be applying glass. So as you can see, automatically, if you import a glass material from, let's say, Revit, it's going to come in as glass in D5 render. So you can choose to bring in your own D5 render glass, or just edit this glass to your suit. Whichever one, it works very fine. So we're just going to go to glass. Under this glass, we're now going to just pick any glass we want. So I'm just going to try and download this normal glass, and I'm just going to apply it just for tutorial sake. So I'm just going to show you how to place glass on a D5 model. All right, so now we're just going to click on this normal glass, and we're just going to place it. So this is just how to place it. You can see there isn't much difference on the railing, so it all boils down to how you edit your material glass. So I'm going to click on escape, and I'm just going to click on this navigation icon and just slow down the movement so I can do it. So I'm just holding shift, so it will be a bit faster. So now I'm just going to click on I'm going to select this glass. I'm going to first of all reduce the hue, so it's going to be a bit tinted since it's railing. Then I'm going to go over to this specular bar, and I'm just going to increase it. So I'm going to increase the reflectivity. I'm going to reduce the roughness to 0. So once this is done, I can select this material. I can click on duplicate material and copy it to this one. So now I'm going to click on I on my keyboard, select this material, click on this, and I'm going to reduce this and reduce the deepness of the darkness of this material. Then I'm going to click on duplicate, and I'm going to copy this to this point. Then I'm going to click on shift, and I'm going to copy it to whatever glass is remaining, but I think we have placed materials on all the glass materials. So I'm going to click on escape. I'm going to click on this icon, increase the speed once again. Then I'm just going to start editing the metallic mullions. So this mullion is looking too dark and opaque. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on I on my keyboard. I could as well, the same way I placed glass materials, I could go and I'm going to place metallic materials. So once I click on this metallic, you can see options. You can download from any of these options, but instead of waiting for these downloads, I'm just going to show you guys how to quickly edit any material and make it metallic. So I'm going to close this, and I'm just going to click on select this mullion here. So as you can see it coming out as very dark. So I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to drag it and change it towards gray. I don't want it to be too dark, more gray. So once this is done, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to reduce the roughness a bit. I'm going to go and turn on this round corner setting, turn on this triplanar. Then I'm just going to reduce this metallic nature a bit, so it won't be too metallic. Increase this roughness a bit, so it won't be too just metallic on its own. So I'm going to click on I'm going to click on duplicate, I'm going to click on copy, and I'm going to paste it on this material as well. Then I'm also going to paste it on this material as well. So now this is done. I'm also going to start placing it on this metallic barbs on the fence. So I'm going to place it on this one. I'm also going to place it on this one. I'm also going to place it on this one. So now let me unhide this fence and place it on this one. Okay, so now we have placed the metallic material on the fence. So now I'm going to apply material on this wall here, which I want to make a marble wall, and I want to apply material on this wooden trellis. So under this wood, I'm going to see an options of nice wooden grains, but what I like using is, okay, so we're just going to use this light brown maple, and we're just going to zoom in, and we're just going to paste this here. So once again, let me just reduce the speed, and I'm just going to come closer here. So as you can see, this is a very nice material. So I'm going to click on I'm going to select this, and I'm just going to tweak some little things about it. So I'm going to click on this round corner. Then I'm just going to turn on this triplanar settings and make sure the grains is flowing in the direction of the trellis panels, which I think is doing. So now let's apply some marble materials to this wall here, because I want it to be a dark marble material, and we're going to apply some nice floor materials on these tiles. So I'm going to go to assets, I'm going to go to stone. Under stone, we're going to go to marble, and we're going to look for some nice marble materials that is good. All right, so we're just going to select this Kerry's dark marble. So I think this is a good marble, and it's going to contrast with this our base color. So I'm just going to place it, then I'm going to tweak it a bit. So as you can see, the marble came in at at a very small scale, so we're going to edit it and make it, enlarge it and reduce. So I'm going to click on I'm going to open the editing interface, then I'm going to change this to triplanar, then I'm just going to reduce the scale. Then once I've reduced the scale, I'm going to of course turn on this round corner settings. I'm going to go over here, I'm going to make the base color lighter so it won't be too dark as it's looking. So I think it's coming out well this way. So now we have applied these basic materials. We're now going to apply the material of this roofing. So as you can see, the roofing is actually blue, but I don't want it to be this color, and it's already corrugated. So I've also done a video of that on how to create corrugated roofing sheets in Revit. So let me just copy some few materials, and I'm just going to click on this, and I'm just going to copy this munion materials. I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to also, I think, okay, so basically I think we're done on this level. So now let's just apply some nice metallic material, or rather let's just edit the nature of this corrugated roofing sheet. Let's just make it a bit metallic. So I'm going to click on I think the color is okay. So I'm just going to go over here, increase the metallicness, reduce the roughness a bit, so it's going to be able to reflect a bit. So now let me just copy some materials from this munion. Let me just copy from the munion, click on copy, then paste it here. Okay, so okay, I'm also going to paste it here as well. So as you can see, we have basically applied materials for this model. So we can copy some materials from the building and paste it on the fence just to unify everything. Copy these wall materials, pasting on each of these fence, so it's going to look nice. So I'm also going to do the same and copy this, and I'm now going to paste this here. Okay, sorry, I'm going to paste this here. Okay, so now let me just resolve this, copy this, paste it here. Okay, so now this is out of the way. Now we have placed the materials of this model. Okay, last thing, it's very important. I'm going to go to floor tiles, and I'm going to add some ceramic tile on this floor. So I'm going to be using this Jazz White tile. It's very nice. I usually use it for my floor tiles, and I'm just going to paste it here. Then I'm going to click on I on my keyboard, select it, and I'm just going to look for this triplanar setting and turn it on. So now we have applied the materials. I think we have done justice to it, at least for the most part. So now the next page we are going to be going to, or the next stage, we are going to start talking about the interior lighting. So we are now going to be placing light inside the interior of this building, so to make it look nice in ambient and evening renders. So the first thing to do is to create a new layer for the light. So by creating a new layer, it gives you more control that you can turn on all the lights in each render, in each type of scenery. In ambient sceneries, you can leave the light on. In daylight sceneries, you can turn off some of the lights. So I'm just going to click on this plus icon here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to rename this lighting. Okay, let me just call it lighting layer. Okay, so now this is done. We have placed this lighting layer. As you can see, we are still going to make sure that we have selected this default layer, so this good check will be on this default layer. Trust me, it's very important to avoid some funny mistakes. So now we are just going to click on this icon here. We're going to go over to this icon here and we're going to click on add light, and we're going to pick rectangular light. So the way lighting works in D5 render is that light bounce off a surface and reflect on through the glass. So for instance, if you place this light here, we are going to place it perpendicularly or parallel to a wall, so the lights of that surface can bounce off and come out of this window. Currently you can see that this light is very weak and dull, so we are just going to adjust it. The first thing to do is we are going to click on, go over to this default layer where it's currently set at, click this drop down icon and change it to lighting layer. Then we're going to increase the intensity to 100, or let's just make it 50 so it won't be too much. Then I'm also going to now increase the attenuation radius. Then I'm also going to click on this icon here, uncheck this, then change this the size to 3 meters, that is 3000 millimeters. So now this is done. You can see that we're in a good position here. Let's continue, click on this basic, click on this property, so the editable interface will come out. Then we're now going to change the temperature and drag it towards the warmer spectrum. Okay, so now it's at the warmer. You can see the light is already popping out through the windows. So now we can copy as many as this light as we want. Hold shift and copy this, hold shift, click on any direction, copy this, hold shift, copy this. So we're going to just place this in strategic points that they will be showing, that they will be popping out in the facade from outside the building. So I'm going to hold shift. I'm just going to drag this one out here a bit, so you can see how the lights are coming out well. Then I'm going to hold shift, drag this here. I'm also going to go to this view. I'm going to hold shift again and just drag it to where I want it to show. So I'm going to hold this. I'm going to also do this here as well. Then I'm just going to hold shift here, drag this inside this convenience space, and I'm going to drag this up to about this point. I'm also going to do the same for this space here, drag this backwards, go to hold shift, do the same for this space here. Okay, so basically you get the gist on how to control these lighting fixtures and place them in such a way that they are going to pop out. So let's just make sure we do the same for this space here. We're just going to drag this light here and place this here. So as you can see how the lights are coming out in this space as well. You can see how good it's looking and all the lights are coming out in the spaces. So now the advantage of this is that you remember that the first light we placed, we set it under lighting layer. So all the lights now are currently under lighting layer. So if I just click on hide in this, I click on this eye icon in this lighting layer, you're going to see all the lights are going to off, which is that versatility I'm talking about. So now we have placed this light. We are going to go further and we're going to place some curtains, because we don't just want, we want some curtains in some certain aspects of this building, so it will not be all lights, all transparent through. So now D5 have some nice curtains. We're just going to go to the asset library, go to the model, then we can just go to under this search and we're going to search for curtains. Okay, let me just try curtain, click enter. So now you can see some curtains, so we can just click on this wind, curtain open. So for now I'm just going to select this curtain closure here. It's a pro curtain component. So remember I told you about the affiliate link, so you can get your pro version at a subsidized rate, and you can also get an extended free trial on D5 Render Pro. Okay, so now the curtain is downloaded. I'm just going to place it here. So we are just going to place it close to the window. Let me just place it here. Okay, so now in this place you can see that how nice D5 curtain looks. So we're just going to adjust it a bit. Okay, so apparently you can't apply materials in D5 curtains, and the curtains aren't really translucent, so light don't pass through them too well. So what we're going to do is we're going to now select a custom curtain, our own custom curtain. So I'm just going to click on this and we're going to delete it. So I'm going to be loading in one curtain I got from 3D Max that I brought in into D5 Render. So I think that curtain is what I usually use in Render, so it can serve for this purpose specifically. Okay, so now I'm just going to click on it and I'm just going to place in this curtain. As you can see, it's not mobile like the D5 curtain, but of course we can adjust it and just make it, we can basically give it the effect we want. So what we're going to do is, once we have loaded in this curtain, we're going to click on it first. We're going to click on size and uncheck this here. Then we're just going to increase the width. So we're going to change the width from 3000 to, let's say, 4000. Okay, sorry, I'm going to click on this, hit Ctrl Z, but that was the height. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to change the width from 600 to 15. Okay, so I think at 15 is pretty good. So now we can now adjust some of these things like the height. So I'm just going to make the height about let's use 45, or let's use 48. Okay, so I think this is good. So now we're going to go to assets again. We're going to go to material and we're going to be using this cotton material here. So I'm just going to click on online and I'm going to use this white cotton gaze and I'm going to place it here. So it's going to give us a translucent fabric. So now I've done this, I'm going to close this. I'm going to click on I on my keyboard to edit this. I'm going to go reduce this opacity intensity to about 0.76. I'm also going to go and click on this and I'm going to change this to fabric just to make sure. I'm going to change this to cloth. Then I'm now going to increase the fall off. So I think this is good. Go to base color, make sure it's white. Then I can now copy this material and paste it on this second material. So it's going to make it uniform. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to select this model. We're going to rotate it. We can even increase the width a bit more. Let me increase the width to 3 meters. Okay, I think it's still fine. Okay, it's a bit too flat. I'm going to increase it to, let's use 2.1. So now I've done this, I'm now going to push this and I'm going to push this to this point. So I'm going to raise this and I'm just going to click shift and I'm going to drag this here. So now once I've done this, I'm going to go out and I'm going to just drag the hold shift again and copy it to the lower floor. And I'm also going to hold shift again. Okay, Ctrl Z. I mistakenly rotated it. So I'm just going to click on this and I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to copy this. Okay, so I'm going to be doing the same for these other major spaces. I'm going to hold shift, copy this to this point here, drag this up to this point. Okay, I think this one I'll need to increase the height to about, let's use 5.4. Then I'm just going to drag this down to this point. Let me increase the height again to 6 meters. Then I'm going to drag this height, Ctrl Z. Then I'm going to click on this. I'm just push it back here. Okay, so once this is done, I'm now going to just adjust it a bit. And I'm going to hold shift and copy it. So now I'm going to reduce the height back to 3.3 meters of this one. Then I'm just going to adjust the position just a bit again. So I'm still going to be duplicating this. I'm going to duplicate and copy this curtain to this other side of the building. I'm going to rotate it and just be placing it one after the other. So I'm adjusting this a bit, holding shift, copy this to this point, and I'm just going to hold shift, copy this here, hold shift, copy it to this higher floor, hold shift, copy it here. So now if you go back to this view, we're always going to be going back to this view to see what we're doing. So you can see we're making some progress, and I think we're done with the lighting aspect of the work. All right, so now we are done with the interior lighting. We're now going to go into the environmental composition. So there are a few things to have in mind when you are doing environmental composition in D5 render. So let's just click P to exit the 2-point perspective. So in environmental composition, your main focus should be on what is visible in the scene you're working in. For instance, if you choose to work on this scene now, everything you're going to be placing is going to be placed as pertaining to this scene, how it's going to make this scene look good. So it's not like when you are modeling in a typical modeling software that you just place things that is objectively proper on a plan point of view. But you just, in this kind of situation, you have to place things that are particularly good for this scene, because the aim is to give the visual view, like to work on this scene and get a visual view, desired view of this particular scene. So we're going to start from the background composition. Then we're now going to go into more intricate composition like the green area around the side. So Another thing that could help you with composition is by hitting T on your keyboard, so you access the top view, so you can easily see where you are placing stuff. Okay, so we're going to go to assets. Under assets, we're going to be going to models, because for this tutorial video I want to use more of D5 models. I don't want to bring in any model from 3ds Max, so you're going to see just how good D5 can be with the pro version. So we're going to start from placing some greenery, some background vegetation, then we're going to be placing some background buildings just to make it look very realistic. So typically for the peripherals of site, I usually like placing some conifers, so the conifers will be outside the site and at the background. So to do that, I'm just going to go to conifers. Then I'm just going to pick one of my favorite conifers, which is this one. So once I pick this one, another thing I could do is I'm just going to click on this brush, because this brush is not like I want to brush the conifers. I actually just want to place the conifers, but I want the settings for this brush to apply on the components I'm going to be placing individually. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reduce this size, increase this random size because I want the size to be randomized, then click on this to off the brush. So I'll now try and place it manually. So you can see the setting has applied. The size is not too big, so it's just working well. So I'm going to try and place it in kind of like a zigzag format, so it's just going to look good. So once I've placed this now, the next thing I'm going to be placing is I'm going to be placing some palm trees. So palm trees are always very beautiful in scene, and D5 has a wide variety of options. So we're just going to go to palm. Under this palm, you can see some free nice palm trees. So I'm just going to try and look for more interesting palm trees. So I'm just going to be using this one. So I'm just going to click on it to download it. I might even download this one as well. So while they are downloading, we're just going to wait a bit. Okay, so I think the palm tree has downloaded. So now we're just going to click on it, and we're just going to make sure we click on it, the palm tree, since it has downloaded, and we're just going to be placing it within the site. So now we're just going to be placing it at key intervals. We don't need to place too much. Let me just place some few ones here at just nice key intervals of the site. So once we are done placing this, we can now place one here and maybe place another one here. So now we are done placing this basic greenery, that is this palms. We can now go and place some background buildings. So for instance, if we are looking at this view, because I think the camera shot is from here, if we go back to this view, we are going to see that we have a lot of provision of space here. So I think that a background building will be nice here, and another one will be nice in this region. So I'm going to click on escape. I'm going to go to T again to access the top view. Then I'm going to click on asset. Under this asset, I'm now going to go to my material component library, and I'm going to go under buildings. So I'm going to look for the group called buildings. So I'm going to go under outdoor. You can see it here. Under outdoor, we're now going to see buildings. So we're going to be looking for some nice small scale buildings that can just fit in the context of this residential building. So if I scroll down, mostly D5 has a lot of high-rise buildings. So let me just see if maybe I could download this gas station, then maybe download a little shopping complex. So to download these background buildings can be heavy sometimes, so I'm just going to download a few of them. So typically these kind of large buildings are good, especially when you are doing large scale renders, so you can just use them in the background instead of bringing in a new file from maybe Max or something. Okay, so we have some of our buildings downloaded, so we're just going to try and start placing them strategically so it will just make sense. So let's say we click on this fire station and we just place the fire station beside this building. So the aim of this kind of background buildings is not to compete with the main building, so I usually place them a bit far apart. It's actually just to complement the scene and make it look more realistic. So let's say we place this one around here, and we bring in the second background building. I think we downloaded it. I think that is this one, and we place it somewhere far from the site. Okay, so this apparently too big. I'm going to click on escape, and I'm going to try and place in a smaller build. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate this and drag this to the background. So I'm just going to drag it somewhere here. And let's go, we're going to go back to this scene too and see how it's placing. So apparently this one is actually placed well, but I'm just going to adjust it a bit, go back to this scene. The same thing I'm going to do for this one, but this one is dragging too much attention in the scene, so we're going to move it towards this point and drag it backwards. So once we've done this, if we click on this scene again, you're going to see it's going to look much better. So now we're just going to push this one backwards because I think it's dragging too much attention as well. Then I'm going to drag this here. Then I'm going to go back to this scene, and I think the thing is still remains a minor in character. Okay, so now we have placed this background building. Let me just adjust this one just a bit. Now we can start going into more intricate composition, like some more green area, the bollard lights, and some shrubs around here, just to give this a realistic touch. So I'm going to go to T once more. Then I'm going to go to my asset library. I'm going to go under nature. Then I'm going to be going to flowering herb to see to the options I have here. Okay, I'm just going to be placing some of this. Rather, I'm just going to go to flowering shrub and see what we can do from there. So I prefer the plantations we have here. So we're just going to wait a bit for it to load, and we're going to start placing some components. All right, so another thing to keep in mind while placing components, especially greenery, is that you need to look at this icon here. What this icon signifies is that this will be dynamic when you're on breeze. By dynamic, I mean if breeze is blowing, it's going to be moving. But if you don't see this icon in a component, it means that component is not dynamic. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to find a good shrub here, and I'm going to be placing it around this project. So in this case, I'm going to be trying and be using this one. So you can always tweak the size, since this effects on the brush tool, even though we are not brushing, will still be applicable to this component. So we're just going to be placing them strategically, and we're now going to place them at good points, so it's going to look nice. So I'm going to place this here as well. So once this is done, we're now going to adjust the position of this tree. Okay, so now we're going to be placing some background greenery. So we're going to be going to broadleaf. Okay, so this background greenery is very important because it can also serve as shading devices to give some nice shadow effects on this render. So it can also block off some unnecessary thing and make the background look enriched. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking for a specific type of background tree. This particular background tree is very important. I love using it for background, so it can serve as a nice background and can also filter out shadows on your building. So we're going to start by placing this one. You could always increase the size, so it's just going to place at the good strategic point. So we're going to be placing one here, just a few of them. So now that is done, we're now going to place some more trees further behind. But these trees, the duty of these trees is to cast some shadows on the building. Once we start tweaking the settings, the render settings again, you're going to see the reason why I do this. So we're going to click on this broadleaf 53. Then once we click on it, we're going to increase the size almost to the maximum, and we're going to be placing one here, one here, one here basically, and one here. So we're going to click on escape, and we're just going to look at the scene, this our scene 2 we're working on, and see how it's coming out. So far so good. It's now coming out well, and I think it's looking good. So another thing to do is that this area here, you can see it's looking kind of bowed. So instead of just leaving it like that, we can place some shrubs around here, some grass around here, so it will not make this place look bowed like this and empty. So I'm going to hit P on my keyboard. I'm now going to zoom out. Then I'm going to go to asset, and I'm now going to go to ornamental grass. So under this ornamental grass, I'm just going to select our usual shrub, this grass cluster, grass 09 cluster. I'm going to click on brush. Then I'm just going to, instead of maximizing the radius, I'm going to leave the radius as small as this, increase the density to like 85%, reduce the size, and reduce the random size. Then I'm just going to select this. Make sure you click on minus, because you can see that broadleaf tree is actually showing. So I'm just going to click on this. Then I'm just going to brush this carefully around here, so we're not going to waste too much. So we can increase the size of the radius, so it's going to be bigger and faster. So we're just going to brush here, brush just this particular zone. Okay, so we can also clean it by clicking on this erase. Then we're just going to erase here as well. Then let's brush it again. This time we're going to zoom in closer. We can reduce the speed of our camera movement, so we'll not be zooming into the floor too much, so it will be more controlled. So I think this is enough. So once we've done this here, we can now maybe add just some in this background. So once I click on escape, I'm now going to go back to this scene too. Okay, So this into, we still have a small window here we have not yet done. So we're going to click on P, click on asset again. So we'll continue doing it. Click on this brush tool. Then I'm just going to extend this brush just to this point. So I'm just going to try and fill up here very well. So now we're also going to do the same thing for other kind of plants. This particular one, let me also like this one and keep it as one of my favorite. Uncheck this. Then I'm going to reduce the density to about half. Then I'm going to brush in these ones. Okay, so now we have done this, we can now maybe do some finishing touch with this last one here. Then I'm just going to reduce the density, then just briefly do some touches around because we don't need much of it. So that is basically it for this green area since we have touched it back. Then we're now going to place some intricate things just before we forget, even though we have not yet reached that stage, but it doesn't mean. We're going to go to assets and we're going to be placing some rocks. You can just click on search and type rocks. So this rocks kind of gives this kind of aesthetical touch because in nature there is imperfection, as I said earlier. So sometimes we just depict it by placing some rocks, shrubs and some of those stuff. So I'm going to be downloading some realistic pro rocks and we're going to add it to the scene. Okay, so I'm just going to click on this and I'm going to place this realistic rock. So let me just click on it and place it. I could even increase the size here and just place it here. Then once we place this, you can see this just adds to more texture and kind of more detail. So we can download other ones, but for now we are going to close this. So we're going to go back to this scene, and another thing we're going to be placing is we're going to be placing some nice bollard light. If this was a street view, I would have loved to place some street lights, but since it's not a street view, we can settle for bollard. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to hold shift. Okay, I'm going to place another green here because this space is looking kind of blank, so I'm just going to try and fill it up with a specific green. So I'm going to click on P again. I'm going to hold shift. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to asset. Under this asset, I'm going to make sure I click on this X to close this rock search. So once I've done this, I'm going to go to broadleaf again. So under this broadleaf, I'm now going to look for a specific this specific broadleaf plant. I love it, so it's very good. So I'm going to make sure I increase the size, then click on it. Then I'm then going to try and place it at some strategic point. So once I click on it, let me just give it a while to load. I'm just going to place one here. Then I'm going to place another one here. So once I've done this, let me just go back to this scene and look at what I've done. Okay. So firstly, it's not looking too good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on it and I'm going to push this one back behind this building. I'm going to reduce the height. So it's just going to serve like this. So the same for this, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to move it and I'm going to move it backwards from this scene, drag it down, then move it backwards. So it's just going to fill up this area I intend on filling. So okay, so this is looking nice. We can also place some shrubs, some little shrubs around here. To do that, we're going to go to ornamental grass, or rather we're going to go to other herbs. So we can now place maybe this nice shrub. It kind of looks very good, so we can place it around and see what it does. So we're going to place this one here. Okay, let's place it here. Then we're going to place one here as well. Okay, so this is just very nice. It gives it a realistic touch. We can go back to ornamental grass. Then we can go and look for some and place this here. And maybe reduce the size. And place this here. Okay, so now this is done. We can close this and we can now start placing some extra stuff like entourage and vehicles. We can also place even cracks on the ground. Okay, so let's start from the vehicles. We're going to go to assets and we're going to go to the vehicle library. Okay, so if you're using the free version of D5, D5 offers some free vehicles, but they don't give this realistic touch just quite yet. So we're going to be using some pro cars and we're going to see how it comes out. So these are some of my favorites. I've already downloaded them before, but if we're looking at this kind of scene, let's just try something a bit unique. Let's use this classic car and see how it looks. Okay, you can see some new, more modern kind of cars. You can even see some pickup trucks. Very nice stuff. So we're just going to try and use this classic car. So I'm just going to click on it and I'm going to try and place it. Then I'm going to hit P. So once I hit P, I'm going to exit the 2-point perspective. So what I'm going to do is, this car is now sort of our model. So I'm just going to rotate it and I'm going to try and place it maybe here, like as if it's coming to park. Then I'm going to go back to this scene and see how it comes out. Okay, so I think I'm going to tilt it a bit. Then I'm going to move it forward. so it's not going to obstruct too much of the view. Okay, so I think this is actually very nice. We can also click on this car and we can turn on the lights depending on the scene we're in. So if we're in a daylight scene, we can turn it off. If we're in an evening scene, we can turn it off. So you see now, as we are placing the composition of this work, you can see that the scenery is already changing. So we might need to get back to adjusting our light settings. Okay, so another thing we can do is to hit P. There's a lot of green plants here and I want some colors here. So I'm thinking of placing a big a flowering tree here. So I'm going to go to Asset Library and I'm going to go to Nature. Under Nature, I'm going to go under Flowering Tree. Okay, let me go to Flowering Tree here. I think that is the first one. So now I'm going to be looking for something a bit colorful and I'm going to be placing it here. Okay, let me click on it. It should load. Let me increase the size. Okay, this is too much. Reduce the size. So now I'm just going to place this here. Okay, so now what we're going to do again is we're going to be adding some things here. Specifically, I want to place some potted greenery because potted greenery, they are just important. It's going to give this a nice touch. Okay, then I'm just going to go to search and I'm going to search for pot, POT. Then we're going to see what D5 has to offer. So this flower pot 10 is very nice. D5 offers it, so I'm just going to select it and I'm just going to try and place it here. So once I've placed this here, I'm just going to rotate it. We're not yet done. We're going to click on X to close this search. Then we're just going to be looking for some flowering tree. So we're going to download this one, and this one is going to serve as our shrub for this pot. It's not going to be big like this. We can always adjust the size of the component in D5. So let's just pick this first. So once we've picked it, let's wait for it to come out. We're just going to place it here. So once I've done this, I'm just going to click on this and I'm just going to go over this tab here. Then I'm going to reduce this size to 1.2. So once this is done, I'm just going to click on it, drag it here and just drag it down. So it's just going to fill in like an actual shrub. So now I've done this, I'm now going to select this tree. I'm going to click on this and adjust this. Then I'm going to hold Control, select this tree, go over to this object tab, right click and group them together. So once I've grouped them, they can move around and it's easier to move around. So now I'm going to place one here. I'm going to hold, okay, I'm going to place one here, just in front here, hold Shift, place another one here. Then I'm also going to do the same. I'm going to hold Shift again, drag one and place one here. Okay, so this is looking good. So far so good. So we're also going to place one in this balcony. Hold Shift. Then we're going to drag it and place it atop this balcony. Drag it up so it will be a bit visible and place it here. We can even drag it up. So now if we go back to this scene and we just drag this down a bit, you're going to see what we are doing, and so far we're doing a nice work. But now the next aspect we want to place some environmental lights, which by that I mean all the bollards and stuff. Okay, so I'm just going to hit P on my keyboard. Then I'm going to try and place some bollard lights. So I can hit T to access the top view. Then I'm going to go into assets. I'm now going to go to search and I'm just going to type in bollard to get D5 bollard light. So I'm going to click on enter, and okay, since the name isn't bollard, we can close this. Then what we're going to do is we're going to minimize this nature and we're going to go to outdoor. We're now going to go under look for some outdoor lights. So under this outdoor, okay, we can see some things here. Okay, so we're just going to click on this outdoor lighting and we're going to see, let's try out this one and see how it's going to come out. All right, so now we have gotten the bollard light. I'm just going to click on it and place maybe this one. Let's see how it goes. So I'm going to click and try and place this one somewhere here. Okay, then once I've done this, I could click on close and I could go back to this scene and see how it's coming out. So we're going to just place one here. I'm going to click on T on my keyboard to access the top view or the orthographic view, then hold Shift and just copy it at some intervals. Okay, so before I copy this, I'll rather want to do something. I'm going to click on delete and I'm going to hit P. So I want to place a lighting component here, so it's also going to help, or I'm just going to rather just illuminate the bollard light. So I'm going to click on this speed and reduce my speed. Then I'm just going to go inside the component, then click on I to access the material editor, then go to okay, it's still here, so let's go inside, click on it, then increase the intensity to about 50, turn on the temperature and make it just a bit warm. So if we click on shift, you can see that okay, it's already illuminating a bit, and this won't be bad for an interior. So we can also click on this to add a light source where we can use this point light. So once we click on this point light, we can just click and try and drag it in and see how it comes out, whether it will illuminate. So I think just placing it somewhere here might just help a bit, even though it's not too pronounced. Or we are just going to place it behind, so the light is going to come from behind, so it's not going to seem too gloomy. So we're just going to move it back since it's not transparent. Okay, just somewhere here I think is enough. Then what we're going to do is we're going to, of course, change the light layer to lighting layer. Then we're going to increase the warmth of the light, increase the attenuation radius, then increase the intensity a bit. Okay, so once we've done this, we can now click on this bollard from D5. We can raise it up a bit. Then we can also click on this light here, then hold Control and click on it, then right click, and we're just going to group them. So now it's grouped, we can click on T and it's good, it's safe to copy now. So we'll hold shift, you can see it's already illuminating the background. So that is the actual job of these bollards in actuality. So we're just going to hold shift and just copy it around the site. So the site is going to be illuminated. So we're going to do the same here, copy it around key plants. Then we're going to do the same. So we're going to go back to this our render scene. You can see it's coming out nicely. So now I want to add some accent light. So this accent line includes some spotlight here because we need some spotlight around this place, and we may even need a chandelier or pendant light here just to complete the accent light of this scene. So I'm going to click on P to exit the 2-point perspective setting. Let's just increase the speed a bit, and we're just going to go and place some light. Okay, so now we've done this. Now we are now going to go to asset. Under this asset, we're now going to be looking if D5 has some interior spotlight. So we're going to go to indoor, and we're just going to go to lamps and see what we have. Okay, we're going to click on chandelier. So these are some indoor chandeliers, but I'm going to use some for the exterior. So I think I'm going to be using this one, this Nordic light. So far I think is a very nice option for this scenery. So I'm just going to place this here, and I'm going to drag it down. So now I could increase the size. I could change this from 1002 to 1008 just to make it bigger. So now it's bigger. I'm now going to shift, and I'm going to try and place it and centralize it. So I'm just going to adjust it to this central ridge of this roof or this ceiling, then push it up, adjust it a bit. Okay, then if I click on close and I go back, we are going to go back to this scene. So once we go back to this scene, we are going to see how the thing came out. Okay, it's coming out nice, no problem. So I'm going to click on P again, and I'm going to try and place some more accent light. So I'm going to go to this, and I'm going to maximize this. Okay, let me not maximize it, just kind of control it and drag it to access more components at once. So I'm just going to try and see if I could look for some spotlight. I'm not sure D5 has it, but if they don't have, we're going to need to improvise and use our old modeled spotlight. Okay, so I'm not seeing really any spotlight that can serve for what I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this, and I'm going to go to local library. So what I'm going to do is now I'm not going to go to models and just search for my own spotlight. So I'm just going to click on it. Okay, so this is just a spotlight I modeled in Revit. It's nothing hard to do. Model it and apply an illuminative material. So I don't think I covered that in the material application, but it's something you can always do. I'm just going to use this one and show you that now. So I'm going to click on close, and I'm just going to reduce the speed of this. Okay, so now once applying illuminative material is very, very simple. There's nothing too difficult about it. Let's just rotate this on this axis and just drag this here. So if you notice, if I click on I and select this material, you are going to see this emissive checked on. So if I check it off, it's going to appear like this. So by default, if you click on any material, you're going to see option to turn off this emissive. So let's just say I click on this ceiling here. I could click on emissive, turn on emissive, increase intensity, and the ceiling itself is going to glow. But I don't need it to glow. So do you understand that? So it's just very simple like that. So I'm just going to click on this one, turn on the emissive, and maybe reduce the temperature, so you can see how it works. Very simple. So I'm now going to click on this and I'm going to increase the speed again, but this time I'm going to be adding a spotlight to it. So I'm going to be clicking on this light and I'm going to click on spotlight and I'm just going to add it to this. So now I'm going to reduce the intensity of the spotlight to 50. I'm going to increase the cone angle. I'm going to increase the attenuation radius just a bit, increase the temperature towards the warmer side a bit. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to group this. Okay, and let me just adjust this to face the direction of this light. Ctrl Z, click on the light, then make it face the angle of this spotlight, then zoom in. Okay, reduce the speed, then zoom in, hold Ctrl, click on this, right click and group. So once this is done, you can see this spotlight. So what we are going to do is we are just going to hold shift and copy this here. Okay, but before we copy it, I'm going to hit Ctrl Z. I'm going to click on this light. I'm going to go over to this group. So if you have grouped something, you don't need to ungroup it to edit it. You can simply go to the group, click on this drop down, then click on the light itself. Then we are going to change the lighting to lighting layer. So it's going to adhere to the rules of this housing. So we're going to click on this to unminimize it. Click out, click on it again, hold shift, then just drag it and copy it. So basically I just need two lights around here, one here. So let's zoom in to make sure we place this well. Then we're going to hold shift and copy it. So let's go back to this scene and see what we've done. So you can see we've done a good work of place some accent lights. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click on save, Ctrl S, and to save this our project. Okay, so now we have done this, we want to place some extra touches before we start working on the render settings and set up some renders. So we're going to add some decals and some entourage. By entourage I mean human beds. You get the stuff. So I'm going to go to assets. This is our asset library. I'm going to exit this search. So I'm going to go back to our online interface. So we're now going to be exploring the decals components group. So these decals is like just some things like cracks, footsteps. So this just helps make the scene realistic, because in a view you will need some things that are just going to catch the attention of people. So we can download these shrubs, we can even download some of these footsteps, then we can also download some road cracks. This can be helpful while rendering roads. Okay, so now as you can see, if I click on this crack now and I click here, it somehow looks inappropriate because this is now an asphalt road, so I'm not going to be using that here. But we can see things like this shrub here, this kind of foliage of grass. Although it's not actual grass models, but it just helps to enrich the scene. So if you just place one and drag it into this to kind of blend in with this green area, it gives it a nice touch. So you can also add some footsteps. Once I place these footsteps, I'm going to go over here and make sure the footstep is white, so it's going to come out. Then I'm going to hold shift and copy it around. Shift, copy it around, shift. I'm going to hold shift again and just maybe copy a few of them. I'm going to shatter it more so it's not going to look too weird and cringe. So I'm just going to do this. Okay, so that is just basically it. Just some nice decals to give it a more realistic. You can even add things like rust. You can add even wall depth. Very nice, depending on what you want to do. So we're just going to place some of this wall depth. Maybe we're going to place one here. We're going to rotate it to this point here. We're going to try and bring it closer to that curb. Let's bring it somewhere here. Then we're going to just drag it to this point and hold shift and pull it here. So now you can see what we are doing. We're actually doing a good job. So we are going to start placing some entourage. So we're going to go to character. So this is where we click on P and we can place some human beings as we want. So we can place I would like to get this wheelchair guy. So it's actually a realistic component, just more like considering the disabled. So we're just going to place some. You can also click on search and you can just type walking, because this walking is important, because you are going to, if you want to animate now, you will need people that are walking. So you can just search walking and it's going to give you, okay, I didn't spell it well, AK. Then I'm going to click on enter. So you can see some components of people walking, so we can just download some of them. Let me increase the speed of this my navigation. Okay, then this one of my favorites. I can download this guy walking here and place it here. Then I could also look for a lady. I can download this Patricia walking. So basically that's what it means. I remember that you can see this box again highlighted on this component, meaning the component is dynamic and it can animate if you are rendering, okay, if you are doing some animations. So we're going to place another lady here walking just directly opposite this guy, so it's going to be nice for the animation scene. Okay, then we're just going to place some character standing. We're just going to click on close to close the search. Then we're just going to look for some dynamic characters, maybe making phone calls and all. Okay, so we're just going to put this casual lady and we're going to put her in this balcony. Then we're going to look for a guy and put him in this entrance, so it's just going to key in well. So you can also add filter first. You can even add filter by okay, not high definition, dynamic only. So this dynamic only is going to give you only dynamic components. So let's say we can now place some let's say, let me use a guy now. So I'm just going to place this Charles warm up, so it's kind of interesting to use. So I'm just going to place it maybe at this entrance. You can see he's already doing his workout, which is all fun and good. So now after we've placed this, I forgot one important aspect in lighting that I'm going to try out. We're going to try out the interior parallax. So as I said earlier, let me just close this. Okay, interior parallax, and I'm just going to turn off this filter. Okay, you are going to see some spaces, some like images here that looks like interior portraits. So what this interior parallax does is that if you click on it, it's actually like an image. So if you click on it and place it behind a glass, you can now see that if you go to maybe a view now, let's just adjust the size of this. Let me delete this particular one and download a much smaller one that is going to fit into this space. So we're just going to look for a nice residential interior parallax. So we're just going to click on it and we're going to place it. So as you can see, if we place this here, you can see how big it's looking. What we can do is just to click on it and reduce the size to 3.3. So it's going to be much smaller in scale. We can now adjust the temperature towards the warmer spectrum and just pull it into our glass, and we can now increase the light intensity to about 50, then drag it down and see what it does. So if we close this and go back to this view now, as you can see from this view now, this is actually looking kind of realistic. You can see this interior parallax, although it's not coming out too well, but it's just a kind of setup for if you want to get, if you don't want to do some composition in the interior, like you can see the way it's looking here in this approach scene. So it's just something I want to throw out there. So I could just make sure I place it under this lighting layer, then rather I'll just delete it. I prefer it just flat and pale like this. I just prefer it this way. So now that is just for interior parallax out of the way. So now we're going to be clicking on P and we're going to be placing some beds, because in render scenes you just want to put some beds out there that are just flying around. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to assets, we're going to go to particles. Under these particles we're going to go to animal clusters, then we're just going to be picking some beds. We already have the free version one, but I'm just going to use the pro one because I just think it should be better. So I'm going to click on this, place it here, then click on escape, then click on the bed component and just drag it up a bit so it's not going to be clashing with our unit. Then if we go to this scene, okay, it's actually not even showing, so we're going to drag it down a bit, drag it backwards, drag it up a bit again. So we're now going to go back to this scene. We are now going to see how this is coming out. So now we are done with the, I think we are done with the composition of this scene. We have covered basically almost everything. We're now going to start creating the more effect. We are going to be adjusting the effect. So usually I like dividing my renders into two aspects, the daytime render and the ambient render. So this one is kind of like a combination of both of them, but I will usually prefer secluding them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this plus here, and I'm going to duplicate this scene. So we have scene 2 and scene 4, which are pretty much the same scene, but they are going to be with different settings. So you are now going to see the reason why I use that what they call it again, why I created the lighting layer, so it's easy to adjust it. So we're going to be working on this scene 1 first. We're going to turn off this lighting layer because we want to turn off the interior light of this, so we want to get a daytime render. So we're going to be increasing this azimuth angle, and we're going to try and be rotating this to we get a nice scene. In getting a nice scene in daytime renders, it's always good to do a nice interplay of shadows. So we want some feathered shadows on the ground as well as some shadows on the building, so it's going to give it this realistic touch. So we can just keep rotating the camera. So I think we have gotten to a good position. Okay, so we're going to also move this entourage since it's not really visible in the scene. Then I think just like that, we're just going to click on this update here to update this scene. Okay, so now we have done this, we can also do the same for this second scene here, and we're going to make it full ambient. So for this full ambient scenes, I like getting an early morning scene out. For that, I'm going to go to environment, and instead of using this geo and sky and custom sun, I'm going to be using some HDRI. So we're going to be using this morning HDRI to be specific. You can see that if I click on it and I just choose early morning, you're going to see this HDRI. Then I'm going to click back up. So as usual, we're going to go to effect. I think the exposure is already down. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to this environment, and we're going to click on this two-way icon, and we're going to reduce the background light. We're also going to reduce the skylight. Then we're going to turn on the sun for a while. Then we're just going to click on rotate to actually get a desired view. So I think this view is good, this position of the sun angle. Then we can turn it off. Then we can reduce the increase the temperature a bit. Then I feel we can go back to effect, and we can still reduce the exposure of the overall render. So now in this kind of ambient views, what we're going to be depending on is the environmental light. So things like this, we're going to turn on the light of this car, and we're just going to, we can control the intensity and reduce it. Then I'm going to go back to this environment. I'm still going to reduce the skylight. I'm going to go to effect, reduce the exposure just a bit more. Okay, leave it at 0.24. Then I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to increase the bloom amount to about 0.37 or 0.36. So this gives it kind of a flare. I'm going to increase the temperature a bit. I'm going to increase the saturation a bit so it will have more color and hue. Then I could just increase some background lights and just give this basically a nice touch. I want to adjust the position of this card for about this point, so I think it's perfected this way. Then I'm just going to click on update. So I'm going to click on this car again. I think the light source's intensity is too much, so I'm going to reduce it to about 30. Then so far so good. I think we're in a good position. So another final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on P to exit the 2-point perspective setting, and I also want to click on this bollard light, hold shift, copy one here, then hold shift again and copy one here. Just behind this screen. So once I copy it, I'm just going to place it here. Then I'm going to go to this group, click on this group, go to light source. Then I'm going to make this light much warmer. Then I'm going to click on P, and I'm going to go back to this scene too. Okay, so as you can see this scene too. We can place shift this guy over here and place this here. So you can see these are ambient scene, and this is our daylight scene. So you see the transition is seamless. The only thing, we just need to manually go and turn off this light here, and we are good to go. Okay, so now this is, we're almost done with this. We're going to just touch a bit of this before we are good to render. Okay, so I think this meets the criteria. So maybe let me just try and explore if I may be able to adjust the sun, because I need some light on this palm tree. So let me just try and see if I can adjust it in a way that is going to throw some light on the palm tree. Okay, so I think we're getting some here. Then I'm just going to click on update. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to adjust the green area that is casting shadow here. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to adjust this a bit. Click on this. Adjust this tree a bit. Click on this here. Adjust this a bit. Click on this. Adjust this a bit here. So now we are going to go back to this scene now, and we're going to see what it's looking like. So you can see it has casted more shadows. I think it has thrown light on this tree. So so far this is looking good. I can increase the altitude a bit just to add to more sunlight. The effect is okay. Let me just reduce the exposure just by a tad, and I think we can increase the temperature a bit just to make it a bit much warmer. Then I think we're good to go. So we can also choose to adjust the clouds, but so far I think this is nice. The sun direction isn't bad, everything is just looking good. So now to render in D5. So to render is very simple. You are just going to click on this image here, this image icon here. So once you have clicked on it, you are now going to change the size of the render. So this size affects the quality of the render, not really the quality but the scale. Let's say we want to make it 3:5, which I usually use for my final renders. Then I'm just going to click on render. Okay, before I do that, I'm going to just touch some settings. I'm going to go to this effect, then I'm going to go to bloom amount and increase the bloom to about 0.3. Then I'm just going to click on update scenery. So what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to click on render, and I'm just going to go to where our file is and just place it. So what we are going to do is we're now going to call this mini duplex render 1. And I'm going to click on save, and we're going to render it. So I'll be right back. So another thing to note while rendering is that the better your system is, the faster the rendering is. So for this particular case, my system uses an RTX 4080. So it's not the highest of the highest GPU, but it's something pretty good and it can run D5 very well. So the better your GPU is, and the better, even though other aspects are important, but GPU is the main, and when it concerns D5, the faster your render output becomes. So that is just something to keep in mind. Okay, so now looking at this, you can see that it's completed. So we're just going to click on open folder. Okay, so we're just going to click on open the render. So this is a D5 raw render. Let's just wait for it to open, and we're going to see how it looks. So as you can see, this is looking very nice. So now the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be rendering the ambient render. Then we're now going to go to the animations, then the post-production. So let's close this for now, close this, then I'm going to click on close. So now we're now going to open the ambient view. So you can see this ambient view, we're now going to render it, just basically do the same thing. We're just going to click on this, and we're going to change this. Okay, before we click on it, let's click on the car, turn on the lights in the car, then we're going to click on this, and we're going to change this to 3:5. Then we're just going to click on render, and we're just going to click on this same and add B to it, so it will be render. Okay, let's just make it render 2 since we are using the numerics, and we're going to click on save, and we're just going to give it a weight as well. Okay, so now we have done the same thing for this ambient view. We are just going to open the scenery, and we're going to open the render. So you can see these renders are as large as 17 MB. So you can see the ambient view as well is looking nice and looking very sharp. So now what we're going to do now, we're now going to enter the animation interface. So we're going to click on close. We're now going to click on this image icon to exit the render interface. So in animation in D5, I'm basically going to show you how to almost everything concerning the animation series, but I'm just going to be using 2 shots to do that. Okay, so we're going to click on this video icon here. So this video means animation. So what you should understand by animation in real-time rendering software, basically it works with keyframes. So keyframes are basically junctions at which a position of something is going to be at. You are going to understand what I mean practically very soon. So now what we're going to do first is we're going to reduce the speed of this camera so our movement will be more controlled. Then we're going to zoom out and start where we're going to start an animation from. Let's say we start here. So it's very important to note that before you start an animation, it's very good to go to this environment, and you're going to turn on some things like the wind settings. If you want rain to fall, you can turn on precipitation settings. So let's just say we want rain to fall. Well, let's turn on this wind setting first, so the place will be windy, and turn on precipitation. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the strength of this precipitation. The puddle effect, we are still going to leave it. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to pick a shot here. So we're going to go up a bit. So I'm just going to click on add camera view. So I'm going to zoom in again and go to this second point and add another keyframe, another frame. So now you can see there is going to be a number showing 3S in the middle of this icon here. So what this number means is it's going to be the time lapse of the clip. So we're going to change it to 5 seconds, which I usually use. And once you have picked this first shot and picked the second shot, we're now going to click on play. So you are going to see we have picked a keyframe. So as you can see, the fact that these objects are dynamic doesn't mean they will automatically animate. You need to be the one manually animating this object. So we're going to go back to this first keyframe. We're going to click on this, and we're going to start talking about animating object. So to animate object is very simple in D5 render. The first thing to do is you are going to take cognizance of this icon here. So this icon means add keyframe. So by adding keyframe, like I explained earlier, is basically controlling the timeline or the time lapse of object. So it means that this car, once I click on this keyframe here, you can see a blue icon appears here. So it means this car at this timeline of this animation, this car will be at this position. So if we move it here and we move the position of this car to this point here and we add another keyframe, it means at this ending of this timeline, this car will be at this position. So we're also going to turn on this rate matching just for the wheels to animate. So we're going to zoom back. You can see the car moved and we're going to play it. You get? So you can see this is smooth. So what we are going to do is you can always edit the positions of the car in each keyframe. For instance, we are going to click on this car and we're going to go back to this keyframe 1. You are going to know you have gone back to keyframe 1 once this blue icon is highlighted. Then let's just move this back a bit to this point here. So you can now see. So as you can see, we are now going to repeat the same movement for these people. So we are going to start from this keyframe 1. Okay, let's go to this keyframe 2 and adjust the position of this car because I feel it's obstructed. So I'm just going to drag this back to this point here. So I think this is good. So we are going to go back to keyframe 1. We are going to start by editing the position of this man in wheelchair. Then I'm going to drag him back here. Then I'm going to add a keyframe. Turn on this rate matching to animate the wheels. Go to this second keyframe or the ending of this video. Drag the man here. Create another keyframe. So let's look at how it goes. So you can see that the woman is animating with the car. So you can see, if you notice, the woman is walking too fast. And to solve this, we'll need to reduce the distance in which they cover in this timeline. Okay, so to do that, we are going to go back to this first clip. Then we are going to click on this lady. We are going to go to this last clip. Sorry, drag it to the end. Then just reduce the distance of walk. So it's going to reduce the speed. So if you play it now, you are going to see how it comes out. Beautiful. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back again and we're going to click on this keyframe here. We're going to add a new keyframe for this lady, add this rate matching. Then we're going to move here and just move her by a distance of about 5 meters. Add another keyframe. Okay, same thing we're going to do for this dude here. We're going to drag this back. We're going to add a keyframe, turn on this rate matching, move to the ending of this animation clip, move him to a new position, add another keyframe. So just like magic, we are just going to play this and see the render settings. So the guy and the lady are walking a bit too fast. So let's just edit some things. So we're just going to click on this lady, go to the ending of this keyframe, then drag the lady back a bit. So now we have slowed down her movement. Click on this, the same thing for the guy, slow down his movement. So I think we are good to go. So now the same way you render images is the same way you render animations. You can just set here and set the animation quality. So currently it's at 720p, which is rather low. I usually recommend for standard system 1080p, but for high-end systems you can use up to 2K. Then we're just going to click on render and we're going to place it where we want to place it. So we're going to click on save and we're going to start rendering it. Okay, so we'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. So we're just going to open the folder and we're going to see the animation clip. So you can see the clip is up to 114 MB. So we're just going to open the clip and see what it does. So you can see this is how to create an animation clip in D5. But there's one thing I noticed with this clip and I'm going to address it in the next clip, so to avoid wasting of time. So we're going to close this. So if you notice in this animation clip, it kind of, let me just play the thing again. If you notice, this animation clip kind of started fast and kind of slowed down in the end. And the reason why it's doing like this is because of a setting we failed to address in this animation clip. So we're just going to click on it. If we click on this animation clip, you can see this movement. So you can see this auto smooth. So this is what the auto smooth basically does. It kind of moves it in like a movie kind or a cinematic kind of way that it starts a bit fast and slows down as it reaches its conclusion. Okay, but we're going to create a new scene and we're going to change that setting. So this new scene is going to be based on a daylight scene. So what we're just going to be doing is we're going to click on this and we're just going to we're going to exit the animation interface, click on this and turn off the light. So we're going to go back to this animation interface, and we're just going to be basically repeating what we did in the former one. So we're just going to zoom out, and instead of making a linear movement this time, we're going to be making an orbital movement. By orbital movement, I mean moving in an orbital manner. And to do that in D5, let's just use the QWE on our keyboard to just adjust this to a nice position first. Okay, so I think this is okay. Let me just go down here and go down here. Go down again. So I think this is good. I think we're in a fair position now. So we're going to go to this environment. As usual, we're going to turn on wind. This time we don't need the precipitation, we just need the wind. So to move in an orbital manner, to create an animation in an orbital manner, we're just going to click on this, and we're going to click on orbit instead of fly. Then we're going to create a new scene. Then we're going to right click. Once we click on right click and hold, we are now going to move in the direction we want. If I hold and move, slide my keyboard to the left side, you are going to see this. If I hold and slide it to the right, so let's just slide it to this position and stop, let's say somewhere here. Then we're going to create a new scene. So now we're going to set the time interval of that scene to 5. Then we're going to click on this scene now. Instead of it being auto smooth, we're going to change it to linear, and we're going to change this second one to linear. So you are going to see it's just going to move linearly. So let's play it again. This clip is somehow too fast, so we're just going to reduce the time lapse to 4 seconds, so it's going to be a bit faster. So let's just place it. Okay, so now we have done this, you can see how good this is. Another thing you can animate in D5 render is the environment. So let's say you can see that we want this sky to move a bit as the thing is animating. We want to see some shadow interplay here. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to this first clip here. We're going to go to this environment, and we're going to go to this azimuth angle. So once we click on this first image and go back to environment, we're going to take cognizant of this azimuth angle degrees, that is 140.4. Then we're going to click on this second one, and we're just going to adjust it to what we want it to be. Let's just adjust it to 129. I don't recommend going too far off the initial angle because it's going to look weird. Or let's go 130. Okay, let's just try it. Then we're going to make sure we click this update icon to update this second clip. Then we're going to click play. So as you can see some shadows moving. So we're just going to animate this car. We're going to go back to this first clip, and we can just drag this car. We can even drag the car to a totally new position and animate it differently. Let's just change this from orbital. Click on this. Let's click on this here. Change this from orbital to fly. Then increase the speed of the camera. Click on P. Increase the speed of the camera. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click on this car in this beginning of this shot, and we're going to change the animation from this and change the angle to this point. Then we're just going to add a new keyframe. Okay, it's kind of lagging. Okay, so I've added the new keyframe. It was just hanging. So we're going to move it to this ending point. Click on P again. Then we're now going to adjust the position and move the car to here. Add another keyframe. So you see we're making a totally new kind of movement here. So we're going to click on play. As you can see. So we're also going to do the same for these humans here. We're going to do this. We're going to move them backwards. We're going to click on this add clip. So let's just play the animation clip and see what it yields. Okay, another thing, we could go to environment. I think the exposure is a bit too much, so I can just reduce it to 0.22. Okay, click on this first one, go to effect. That is one thing about these animation clips. You need to be particular about this change of settings. Let's say 0.22. Make sure you update this first one. Go to this 0.22 again, and make sure you update this second one. So now this is done. We can click on render and render the second clip, and we'll now go to post-production. So we'll be right back as usual. Alright, so now we've done this, we're just going to open our folder, and we're going to see the clip too. So this is our second clip. So you can see this some wonderful stuff. We have done a nice animation work. So now the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to do some post-production. So for that, with that said, I'm just going to close this and close D5. So I'm going to just close D5. Make sure I click on save project while closing it. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm now going to open the folder where the two renders are, and I'm just going to do some touch up on Photoshop control some things I feel are not right, and basically we are done after that. So I'm just going to go to Photoshop. So I have Photoshop 2023. If you have a later one, or even as low as 2021, I think 2021 is the minimum I recommend. You should have at least 2021 at this period in time. So we're just going to do some little touch up on the Photoshop. Okay, so now what we're simply going to do, nothing too complex. We're going to open the folder where the images are. I think that is this one. Then we're just going to drag in one of our image. Let's drag in this render one. So once we've dragged in this render one, we are now going to click on this filter. We're going to go to camera raw filter. Then we're going to be adding some stuff in this camera. Okay, so once this camera raw filter is on, firstly we're going to turn on the temperature just a bit by like ×2. Or okay, ×2 is okay. Then we're going to increase the tint by like ×4. Then the exposure, I think the exposure is okay. I would rather say it's even a bit too much. I'm just going to reduce it by -0.05. Then the contrast, I'm going to increase the contrast just a bit by 1. The shadows, I'm going to darken the shadows a bit. I'm going to drag it down just by -4. Then the texture, I'm just going to turn on the texture, tune in the texture more, increase the clarity just a bit. Vibrance +1, saturation and vibrance +1 as well. Then I'm going to go to detail. Then I'm going to increase the sharpen to about 20 to 30. Let me just use 20 something. Then I'm going to increase this noise reduction. Then if you click on this icon here, you're going to see the former image and the new one. So this is the former one, this is the new one, looking much sharper. Then I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to hit Ctrl S, and we've had a refined 3D view. So I'm also going to do the same for this. I could just click on this folder, and I'm going to drag in this mini duplex render tool. I think that is this one. Then we're going to drag it here. So as you can see, we are just going to typically you can just click on filter, and once you click on this camera raw filter, it's going to apply all the settings you applied in that one to this one, which is looking all right. But I'm just going to hit Ctrl Z a bit because I want the camera filter, or I'm just going to close this overall if I'm not sure the thing reverted. Then I'm just going to drag it again, and I'm going to do some custom camera render settings, or some custom post-production for this ambient view. So I'm going to hit filter, I'm going to go to camera raw filter. Then I'm just going to wait for it to load. Then I'm going to start working on it. I'm going to go to the basics. The temperature, I'm going to increase it a bit. I'm going to the tint, I'm also going to increase it a bit. And the exposure, I'm going to reduce it by, let's say, -10 degrees. The contrast, I'm going to increase it a bit. The shadows, I think the shadows are nice, but I'm going to make it darker a bit. The texture, I'm going to increase the texture. I'm going to increase the clarity. I'm also going to increase the vibrance, and I'm going to increase the saturation +1. I'm now going to go to details. I'm going to increase the sharpen by about 20 something, noise reduction. Then we can see the former image, see the current one. Then we're just going to click on OK. And I think we're going to hit Ctrl S. So I think we're done with this two rendered image. We can now close Photoshop, and we can just open the two images and see what we've done using normal image. So we click on it so we can see the two results of the renders. So this is looking very nice. So this is basically what you can do with D5 render. I hope you follow to the end of this video and you've learned a lot, so you can see how good this software can be. Okay, so if you haven't done so, make sure you reward us by hitting the like button, subscribe to this channel for more content like this. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, because we do this on a weekly basis. With that out of the way, I'm going to tell you thank you again, and I'm going to wish you good luck till we see you again in the next video. Have a nice and wonderful day.